A colliding of two trajectories in the Big Ten, one on the rise, one on the decline. Michigan heads into Illinois. This is going to be an awesome game to watch from the perspective of pretty much we know what's going to go down here. Michigan is running the football. Let's talk about the Wolverines first. Quarterback. Michigan now, I think, has played 4 different quarterbacks, if not 3. Jack Tuttle, Alex Orji, and their starter for the year, Davis. I just have not seen something so dysfunctional from a defending national championship ever. In my lifetime, at least in the 21st century, never seen something like this. But that's what happens when you have a lightning in a bottle coach and a lightning in a bottle team. Almost the entire starting lineup for Michigan last year, minus a few players, went to the draft. They're now in the NFL. Jim Harbaugh leaves for the NFL. And so you've got to pick up the pieces and put it back together. And that's why you've got this Michigan team with a disappointing loss at the beginning of the year, and then versus Texas, and then a disappointing loss on the road versus Washington. But I still think that they have juice. In the run game, they look great. Go back and look at that USC game. USC is one of the best, if not the best, 3-3 team in the country. They come in on the road. They have a pretty dynamic offense. Lincoln Riley is cutting up this Michigan defense. And still, Michigan pulls out the win. They rush for 290 yards versus USC. And why is that? Because regardless of the record, regardless of the offensive performance, they know how to get physical and win the line of scrimmage. And that is the rock on which Sharon Moore is going to establish the new Michigan football team that is going into the future. Run the damn ball. And so far, given the talent disparities in the passing game at the receiver position and the quarterback position, I think it's worked pretty well. Michigan is, let's see here, first in red zone touchdown scoring percentage, which not too shabby for a team that can't pass the ball. But Jack Tuttle, I want to say this. I think he's going to be getting the start versus Illinois. Came into the Washington game and went 10 for 18, 98 yards. Not off the chart numbers by any means. He didn't play the full game. If he had, he might have had quite a few more passing yards, but I think it's a good start. I don't know how much of a dynamic runner Alex Orji is compared to Jack Tuttle. Now, obviously, the athleticism disparity there is off the charts, but what I'm trying to say is I don't know how much better the Michigan run game gets with Alex Orji at the quarterback rather than Jack Tuttle. Because when you don't want to run the ball with your quarterback, Jack Tuttle, you hand the ball off to your extremely talented running backs who have kind of been a little disappointing to start the season. All that being said, let's talk about Illinois. They have been off to an absolute banger of a start, 5-1 with a huge victory versus Nebraska, but they are coming off of a very disappointing and honestly very predictable loss to Penn State. I think they lose that game 17-7, and props to them for keeping that game so close. I think it was 7-7 at halftime. Brett Bielema, is really doing a great job at one, keeping his job, and 2, having his players motivated over and over and over again to go out into the trenches and win for him and for this Illinois program. Those 2 things are massive in my opinion. It builds a lot of momentum towards the future and towards potential Big Ten title contention. Let's talk about the game though. Michigan goes in on the road, I think, regardless of what is going on. Offensive running the football and then following that up with a stout physical defense translates anywhere. Doesn't matter if you're playing in the shoe with Ohio State. Doesn't matter if you're at a whiteout with Penn State. If you can run the ball, you can run the ball. Michigan is 73rd in college football in third down conversions allowed. That's the only alarming stat that I want to talk about. I think that's very interesting considering the talent on this Michigan defense. Now, Will Johnson has kind of been in and out of all of these games. He's dealing with, I think, at least a couple injuries, if not one injury that just continues to nag him. Don't know if he's going to be 100% for this game, but Illinois comes in pretty healthy. But let's talk about where they are as a team and where I kind of see this game going. They are 88th in the country in rushing yards per game allowed. No bueno. Versus Michigan. 116th in third down conversion percentage allowed. No bueno for a team like Michigan. They're number 70 in the country in time of possession. Once again, no good versus Michigan. But last but not least, they are number 22 in the country in yards per pass. What does that tell me? They are open to the explosive play, and so far, this Michigan defense has let up a few of those, especially there in the Texas game and at the end of the USC game. USC, their whole comeback was predicated on making those big plays, which they did for the most part until the last part of the game. Michigan finally clamped up. Okay. Going back to the game, I think Michigan can run the football really well. They are 3.5-point favorites heading into this game. I think they easily cover that spread. I personally think they're going to win by 10 plus, but it's not going to be the low-scoring affair that you think it is. Michigan lost 27-17 versus Washington, but there were several spots in that Washington game where Michigan was driving the field and turned the ball over, or driving the field and a penalty stopped them, or driving the field and all of a sudden it just kind of crapped out. I don't see that happening versus an Illinois team who is not that physical, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think Michigan can run all over them, create a big lead at the beginning, and then Illinois will kind of pull a USC and start to come back in the second half. Luke Altmaier has proved me wrong over and over and over again. I think he gets off to a slow start versus Michigan, but really starts to turn it on in the second half, but it's not enough. I think Michigan wins this game. They cover the 3.5, and they score over 43.5 points. In the last 4 Michigan games, you take their combined score, all 4 of them go over 43.5 points. Now, let's talk about our college football 25 model. I simulated this game 50 times in college football 25. Really cool stuff. Let's talk about the results of those games. In the 50, Michigan won 78% of the time. They covered the spread 70% of the time, as opposed to Illinois winning 22% and covering 30%. The average score was 29 or almost 30, 29.9 to 18. The median score 29, 17.5. So the over looks like it's a consistent hitter. As a matter of fact, it hit 64% of the time in these games, and that's what I'll be taking. I think that more likely than not, Michigan will cover the 3.5 regardless of what the total is. I'm adding the total on just because it got such a high percent grade here. I think the final score is going to be 27-17, an inverse from the Washington game. I could definitely see this game going 34-21 or something like that, but 27-17, that would put you at a 44 over. Little close, but not that close when you consider that Michigan is going to put up a lot of these points early on, and Illinois is going to be trying to storm back the entire rest of the game. So that's going to do it for our Michigan-Illinois preview. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Be sure to tune in to the rest of our college football previews for Week 8.